Welcome back, everybody, to another thrilling episode of Thrive Street Program with Coach 2J. This is your host, Jeremy Jones, and today we're going to talk about running form and how people should work on running form today when we're doing the metcon, as well as why half kneeling single arm dumbbell presses are awesome. So, one of the things that we don't do enough of, and we are going to be shifting into a running focus here pretty soon. So we want to make sure people get a chance to think about running not just as propelling yourself forward, but actually a technical movement that it is. When we run with proper form, it actually means we're going to be able to run more efficiently. We'll be able to run faster. We'll be able to have less injuries. So it's all good when we have good running form, instead of just propelling your body a specific distance, which is, I think, the way most of us were brought up when it comes to running. There wasn't a whole lot of running instruction when it came, even though if you did lots of team sports or whatever, you just ran and you were expected to figure it out. Working on running form is also tough because people tend to forget about their form when they get tired, right? They're not trying to maintain form, and after a few seconds or 100 meters, they just slip back to their old habits, so there's a lot of bad habits that keep creeping up because people keep defaulting back to those bad habits. And I am a fan of the sort of pose running form. So I'm going to take a crack at drawing this. We're going to have our body and our head, good posture, arms bent, and then we're going to be working on the figure 4 style running technique, slightly bent knee, foot on the mid-foot landing. So we want to have that foot strike below the body, right? So we want to have a very short distance here underneath the center line. So that you want to think about the legs moving up and down as pistons, with the center of mass slightly in front, a slight lean, and then as the farther they lean, the more the faster you go, right? So one of the ways that you do this is you'd have people, you can have partners, stand in front and hold them back, and they can lean into them and then run in place, and then they get out of the way like a door, and then they'll just start running, right? That's one of the ways you can have people practice this. Other ways you could actually have them just lean into the wall and then turn and run, trying to maintain that same running technique. But basically you want to explain to them is that the feet come straight up and down, so we're using the hamstring to pull the foot up, and it's almost like a circle. So we want to have a small circle here, and versus if we reach out in front, I'm gonna have to draw a new drawing. If we reach out in front, what happens is when people are doing much more of a heel strike, even though this isn't the best heel strike, I just drew that person's foot backwards. Definitely don't run like that. So their foot's coming out and they're reaching really far. I'm going to draw it as an exaggeration. And they're at heel. This means that they're putting the brakes on. So every time they reach out with that leg way out in front, that impact on the heel sends a shock wave through the body. It's really hard on the ankles, knees, hips, and low back. And it also is putting the brakes on, because now you're actually creating resistance to the forward motion, versus just landing straight up and down. And what this also does, if you think about that, now the foot is going to be in contact with the ground a lot longer. And if I were to draw that circle, it would look like something like that, right? Which is going to be a lot slower versus having the small, fast circle that we want. And this also means that the legs are going through a lot larger range of motion. So there's a lot more muscular effort being used and energy being used versus this shorter up and down movement that we're doing here. And we're just using the muscles improperly. So not that heel striking is the worst. It's okay if the heel is striking, but it's, again, a little bit more midfoot underneath the body. I'm not totally, in my experience and personally, but also in coaching, it's okay to do a little bit of heel strike, a little more midfoot. It doesn't have to always be like on the ball of the foot. I think that's a common misconception when it comes to pose running. It doesn't have to be ball of the foot, but definitely not reaching way out in front. I also like to have people, another good coaching cue for folks is to have them do, they're doing the pose run. Oh, this person's really tall. I'm going to draw them like this. Is to say, okay, you want to imagine that you're standing inside of a glass box, right? And there's you don't want to kick the wall in front of you, and you don't want to kick the wall in back. So that leg is not reaching way out in front and then being trailed way really far behind. You want to imagine that there's like there's a moving box that's right in front of your legs, and that's another way to help people kind of visualize that not heel striking while they're running. And then, of course, explaining to them, good running form is going to make you go faster. It's going to make you use less energy, and it's also going to prevent injury. All right, so got our Moscow warm up. We're going to do some hip activation stuff, and then we're going to spend 6 minutes working on a max broad jump or near max height box jump. Again, don't do max height box jumps, like absolute max height box jumps, unless you have the proper equipment. And even then, it's really just something cool to show off on Instagram. It's not really important for fitness or whatever. I do like it as a test because it does demonstrate explosive power, but it also demonstrates the mobility, the range of motion to get your legs up high enough into the bottom of that squat to land on the boxes. But people falling over backwards or eating it on the box is just not worth it. A broad jump is a lot safer and a cooler way to kind of test people, and doesn't take any equipment. Then we're going to do some power cleans. So that jumping motion is going to help people work with their power cleans. And again, you can always link that and say, look, we really want you to open that violent opening of the hips that we want you to use on these power cleans. And when it comes to half kneeling, single arm dumbbell or kettlebell shoulder presses, what this does is it really kneeling down makes people changes the dynamics of the hips and the shoulders. They have to stabilize their hips a little bit differently, and it also takes out any sort of kipping or bending or cheating of the motion. And I also like the fact that we can alternate which leg's in front with the same arm overhead, and we can find out if there's any hip imbalances from left to right or whatever when they're pressing overhead. So that it's a really good movement. The single arm movements are also something that we always need to be incorporating into the programming because it's really good for the body. I think people get really, if you just look at sort of the pure CrossFit programming, especially when it comes to metcons, we don't see a lot of single limb work because they don't generate the same sort of metabolic taxing that we would with two-handed movements. So that's why they show up in the superset so often. All right, now we've got death by 10 meters going prone. So again, I just talked about all that running stuff. You might save this for this part of the class. Don't talk about it necessarily at the beginning of class. But say, look, this workout is basically a version of the beep test. And if you don't know what that is, it's where you run back and forth with a series of beeps, with it increasing basically every time. So we're just going to use a 1 minute timer. We're going to start like in a burpee position and chest on the deck, and then we're going to get up and run 10 meters. So if you don't have 10 meters, which is again about 31 or 33 feet, it's, you can always do 15 feet out, 15 feet back to the starting place, right? So that can be that can be much more doable if you have a smaller gym that you have to do this in. But it's run out, run back, lay back down, right? Or in the more pure sense, it's run out, run, and then lay down. Now the first minute, people are just going to walk, right? And say, okay, we want you to work on your running form. So this is a great workout to incorporate sort of this running technique, because the first 5 minutes, it's going to be, you want to have people work on their running technique. So that first minute and say, okay, guys, I saw some of you guys doing this. I saw some of you guys, not turning your shoulders at all, or you were heel striking or whatever. So they should jog at a decent clip and practice that running form. And then just to point out, what's going to happen is on the first minute, they're going to run over here. So we'll call this side A and this side B. And then, so they're going to be on side B. And then so when the minute ticks over from 0:59 to 1:00, they will go there and back, right? Now they're going to be back at B. And then they go there, back there, and then they're back to A, right? And you might want to draw this out as, one. Oh no. No. How do I unzoom? Draw and zoom. No, that's not what I want. I hate when it does that. So what you might want to do is draw on the board, like again, A, B, and then have it be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, down like that. So they understand, okay, when I'm on this side of the gym, I'm on round 1 or round 2, and they can keep track that way. Because counting on this one can kind of be a pain in the butt. But you'll tell people, okay, we're doing round 7, you should all be on this side of the gym, or whatever. And that way they all know, okay, and they should be counting as they run. But again, have them work on that technique stuff as they're running, so that they can actually incorporate this. Now, when the time starts to speed up, that's when they're going to start to lose their form a little bit. But in this case, it's the amount of reps that they get with good form is going to far outweigh the amount of reps of bad form, because even as they get up to something like minute 9 and 10, they still should be able to maintain some good form. Their rest has been shortened, and then they might get to a couple more rounds, right? So they're still but you add up all the 1 through 10, they've got a lot more quality reps in, if that's what they're focusing on. Instead of having people just sort of walk, right? Because what'll happen is the first minute they walk, and then basically the first 7 minutes or 6 minutes, they're just walking back and forth. Which might be a way to get a higher score because you're staying more rested, but it's not the way, it's not as beneficial, because we actually do want to work on technique for the first part of this workout. This is a really fun workout. I hope you guys enjoy it. It is the precursor to the bootlegger burpee. We were doing these years before I came up with the idea of actually just incorporating them as a burpee type movement, but it's basically what it is. Every time they want to turn around, they have to stop and do a burpee. But that's it for today, guys. Thanks a lot, and thrive on.